Welcome back, everyone. Episode 24 of Bando's Breakdowns. My name is Zain Bando. You might know me from my flagship MMA show, the MMA Outsiders. We just hit 100 episodes the other day, so in case you guys have not checked that out yet, just wanted to give a small plug to hitting 100 episodes of the MMA Outsiders here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Speaking of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, this is a production of it. It is also presented by Playback. Before we get into the show today, just wanted to do a quick reminder. Go to youtube.com/ETV Network. Very much appreciated. Helps out the algorithm a ton. If you could like this video, if you are on the video only side, like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Tell your neighbors. Tell all your peers. Would be very, very much appreciated because it keeps me doing more shows and putting out more content like Bando's Blitz and shorter videos that you see across all of the network verticals. You can get Bando's breakdowns for your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, YouTube Premium, and so much more. Again, if you're on the go, you can listen to this wherever you get your podcast. And for those of you who are listening on the side, be sure to do the inverse, go back over to the YouTube home, and so much more. Again, and my name is Zain Bando. You should know the drill by now. This is episode 24 of Bando's Breakdowns. Again, I'm a sports journalist and an ETV Network co-host. You've seen my bylines in several different places, including Once Upon a Time, the Sporting News, Fansided, and then, of course, currently MMA Knockout on Sports Illustrated and a couple other places. And, of course, you can find me on this show, on this show and across the network, including Football Forecast. And then, of course, as I alluded to just a minute ago, the MMA Outsiders as well. So excited to get into this today. Again, another packed episode, very, very heavy on the college football and NFL front. But I wanted to start off this episode today with a little bit of sad news. We had two, but before I even get to the sad news, wanted to send out a brief reminder that this episode and every single show on the End of the Bench Podcast Network is presented by a Playback. So without further ado, here we go. Presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together, and with the NBA season right around the corner, please go to playback.tv/ETV Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. We're going to be doing a lot more NBA moving forward as the season is drawing closer and as NBA preseason media days have wrapped up within the last several days. But before we get into the show's content today, because we have a lot of it, I just wanted to give a quick sad piece of morning news, if you will. Unfortunately, Pete Rose, the MLB's all-time hits leader, did pass away at age 83. Ryan Toohey from Hitting for the Cycle did a very good video, just kind of chronicling what his career and what he meant to the game of Major League Baseball. And I think Pete Rose gets a lot of flack. I think he's someone who was definitely ahead of his time. I mean, did he bet on baseball? Should he be in the Hall of Fame? I mean, some of those are mutually exclusive, others aren't. But I think you have to respect Pete Rose's greatness, considering that he was ahead of his time. He made the Cincinnati Reds a relevant baseball team back in their heyday, and you just have to give him all the credit in the world because he made baseball fun. And I feel like I'm a casual baseball watcher, but there are superstars in today's league that make you interested in the sport. One of them being Aaron Judge for the Yankees, who obviously could be carrying New York to a potential World Series championship. But I think when you look back on sporting history, he's one of the icons that will be remembered as one of the best baseball players of all time. It's very, very sad to hear that he did pass away, as it was right after the Mets Braves doubleheader on Monday afternoon. We're recording this on Tuesday, the first day of the MLB wild card portion of the postseason. So very, very sad news coming out of the baseball community. My thoughts and prayers are with his family at this time. And my thoughts and prayers go out to all baseball fans who even got a remote glimpse to see him play, no matter what stage he was in his career. Obviously, he spent the bulk of it with the Reds there, and of course the mid '80s as well. So a very very tragic death there, and someone who became kind of a global sensation after his playing career. Um, you had Mutombo, unfortunately, pass away. He was 58. Obviously known for the "No, no, no, not today." Very very famous catchphrase as one of the best NBA bigs in recent memory. Died extremely young. Very disappointing to hear. Just absolutely shocking. The Raptors owner, I'm pretty sure, was moved to tears when he found out the news that he had passed away. Just very sad, and just truly a sad day for the NBA community. Again, right before the season is about to get underway. So two very sudden sports deaths in the last 24 to 48 hours, and just wanted to give my condolences where they were due there. Jumping right into Zan's overview, it's a pretty big overview uh, this week. Just to give you a brief synopsis of what we're going to be discussing, we're going to be talking all about college football. We're going to be talking about the previous week in the NFL. We're going to be going over the new week in the NFL. We're also going to be going over some college football top 25 games to watch later in the show. We'll recap UFC Paris, and we'll briefly preview UFC 307, as well as give you guys an overview of what my UFC predictions record is going into this Saturday. So, without further ado, let's get into it. My alma mater, the University of Illinois, no longer undefeated. They are now 4-1. They stay in the AP Top 25. They dip from number 19 to number 24 after a 21-7 loss at the hands of Penn State, who now is riding a ton of momentum. After a hot start there. Just real quick, wanted to comment on the performance of both sides. Illinois looked really good in the first series. They obviously scored the first touchdown of the game, but for the most part, the offense was held in check. I think Penn State did a really good job of stifling an Illinois offensive line that kept Altmaier upright for much of the first few games, and Illinois surrendered 7 sacks, which is something you can't do. You're not going to win a football game if you give up 7 sacks. That's number one. And if you can't deliver a potent rushing attack like Illinois had been able to do the first couple of weeks, with Caden Fagan and Aiden Lawfery, and if you can't get your big play receivers like Pat Bryant open, it's going to be cause for concern. Penn State's running backs played really well in this game. Drew Aller was relatively efficient at the quarterback position, and Illinois just did not control time of possession. The only thing I guess that was going for Illinois was that Penn State gave up more penalty yardage, but at the end of the day, it didn't fully matter. This is a loss that you can't hang your hat on too much, just considering that Penn State is the best team that Illinois has played so far. And 4-1 is a tremendous start. I mean, Illinois is doing things that they haven't done, in a long time. They're, some stuff that they've already achieved, it hadn't been done since '01. Other stuff, like their meteoric start, has only been done twice since the 1950s. So I think Illinois has a lot to be excited about entering the bye. They have a Purdue team that just fired their offensive coordinator in Graham Harrell, and they look like a complete disaster. Their only win so far this season was a shutout against Indiana State. They've lost every other game since, including a game in Nebraska, where after the first quarter was 0-0. So that's a huge cause for concern. And what's good for Illinois is 3 out of their next 4 games are at home, with the only road game being against Oregon. And Oregon looks like a wagon so far, with Dylan Gabriel at the quarterback position and just what Dan Lanning has been able to do, successfully transitioning over to the Big Ten. So, I think there's a lot to be excited about if you're Illinois. The big question is going to be, can they keep this mark of consistency up? Because they're 4-1, as I just alluded to a minute ago. 3 out of their next 4 games are at home. just to give you a little capsule of what their upcoming schedule looks like. They've got Purdue at home. Then they've got the Memorial Stadium rededication game, which I will be in person for. That's October 19th against Michigan. And then they go on the road and they play Oregon. And then they go on a bye after a game against Minnesota. And then after that, they play Michigan State for Senior Day. Then they go to Rutgers, and they have a neutral site game to end the year against Northwestern. So it's a manageable back half of the schedule. The question is going to be, can they get those key wins? Can they win one out of the two road games against Rutgers and or Oregon? That'll be a big question. Can they beat a Michigan, a defending national champion who has finally figured this offense thing out with a relatively young quarterback in Orgy. And can they beat a Purdue team that's struggling? And can they beat a Minnesota team that's off to a really slow start? So, quite frankly, their toughest remaining game is going to be Oregon. That's probably going to be one of the few games they won't be favored in, if not the only game they won't be favored in the rest of the year. So I think a 4-1 start for Bielema and company is great. Again, the big question is going to be is can they keep this mark of consistency up moving forward? And on top of that, can they deliver something special in Champaign and what they haven't seen in a long time, which is an 8+ win year? Bielema was able to go 8-5 in 2022. Can they eclipse that 8-win mark for the first time in a long time? That remains to be seen. But there's a lot of excitement in Champaign, and again, I think if they can measure up well, they should do just fine. Moving over to the NFL side of things, I'm really upset about this because I picked against them. But the Bears, they won. Caleb Williams 2-0 as a starter at Soldier Field. Beat a Rams team that looked like had all the momentum after the San Francisco 49ers win a week ago. And the Bears played great. The defense played really well. Caleb Williams was efficient throwing the football. The Bears were able to control the clock in the fourth quarter. They ran the ball well. I mean, they did exactly what they needed to do to win this game. And this was, a close game. The Bears covered the spread. Obviously, they were slight favorites, which people were shocked about, and a bunch of people got burned probably because that line was begging you to pick the Rams, and Vegas was right. So good for the Bears to get this win. It's nice to see when you got your young quarterback, obviously a rookie, playing as well as Williams did in this game, and to see the defense play as well as they have, especially at the end of the game, to prevent Stafford from um, from going on a game-winning drive. That obviously was satisfying to see, considering how well he's played against the Bears in recent years, and that improves the Bears' winning streak against the Rams at home. Um, Going back about 20 years, they didn't lost to the Rams at home since 2003, even when they were back in St. Louis. So it was a good win for the Bears. They get another home test, though. They're going to be playing the Panthers this upcoming week, and this is a game where I think where I think people might be underestimating Carolina just a little bit with how they played last couple of weeks. So let's jump right to that. So this upcoming Sunday, we got the Bears taking on a Panthers team that was able to upset the Raiders. Played decently competitive against Cincinnati, didn't do enough to win, but I do think the Bears are a little bit of a better team. Again, Andy Dalton is a backup quarterback. The Bears just have much more talent on both sides of the ball. Again, very similar to the Rams game last week. If they can control the time of possession, if Caleb doesn't turn the ball over, and if the rushing attack with Swift and Roshan Johnson is plentiful, um, that'll be interesting. And then from a Panthers perspective, as long as Andy Dalton can keep the game close, I think anything is possible with this Panthers team. So just something to keep in mind there. I am picking the Bears to win. We're going to go with a final score of 34-17 over the Panthers. I think they get out to a big lead early, and I think they hold on in the fourth quarter to get another win to improve their homework to 3-0. So let's see how that game goes there. I think it's a game that the Bears have to win to give themselves confidence going into what's um going to be a brutal month of October. Because if you look at the Bears' upcoming schedule, they're not going to be at Soldier Field for quite some time after this Panthers game. They got to go to London to play a Jaguars team that isn't very good. They got to play a Commanders team on the road that's playing better. Then they got to go to Arizona. Arizona's hit or miss. And then I will be in attendance for Bears Patriots on November 10th. So a month on the road is could be easier said than done. So if the Bears can pick up a couple of key NFC wins, they'll be in a great position moving forward into November because right now they're currently sitting at 2-2. If they can get to 5-2 going into the Patriots game, that would be huge. So just something to bear in mind there. Northwestern is coming off of its own bye week. They haven't looked very good the last couple weeks. They only could muster up 5 points on the road at Washington. They've had numerous offensive line issues. Jack Roush has been relatively inconsistent. And now they got an Indiana team that's doing things they haven't done since the 1960s. Indiana's 5-0 coming to Evanston at the Lakefront Stadium, of course, with a 2:30 Central kickoff and BTN tailgate in Evanston. This is a huge game. David Braun has not lost back-to-back games and is about year and change as or he's coming up actually. He became the official head coach in late October, early November. So he hasn't quite come up on a year yet, but still he has yet to lose back-to-back games at the helm of Northwestern. And unfortunately, I think this Indiana team is just too good. I think their quarterback is better. Their rushing attack is better. They have better linebacker play than Northwestern does, and they can score a bunch of points. I don't think Northwestern has the offense to put up 42 points. And I understand that they have, a bunch of talent. They still have Henning. They still have Cam Porter. But they still have guys that can compete. The question is going to be is can they put Indiana in uncomfortable situations? I personally don't think they can. I think this is a close loss for Northwestern. I think it'll be 24-17. And this is going back to the drawing board game for David Braun to see, what team he really has. Because if they lose this one and you get into a dire situation where your month of October it has you going on the road and playing a bunch of teams that you'll likely not be favored against, that's most bad news. So I'm actually picking Northwestern to lose this one. And actually looking at Northwestern's upcoming schedule, I think they're going to lose a couple of these games. Honestly, obviously, as I just alluded to, you got Indiana this week, then you go to Maryland, who's playing really well. So I'm going to say, let's see. Currently looking at where Northwestern sits, they're 2-2 and 0-1 in Big Ten play. Obviously, losing to Washington. So moving through this year, so I think they lose this week, they'll be 2-3. They'll lose to Maryland, they'll be 2-4. They'll lose to Wisconsin, they'll be 2-5. They'll lose to Iowa. They'll be 2-6. I don't think they're going to pick up a win until the Purdue game at Purdue. I think Northwestern is just slightly better than Purdue. I think Purdue is a dumpster fire. I mentioned it earlier in the episode. The coaching changes that they're going through, and I don't think this is a bowl eligible team because now that being said, I'll say 2-3, 2-4, 2-5, 2-6, 3-6. I'm going to see this as a 3-9 Northwestern team at best. I think this team is brutal. I think it's a setback year from the remarkable bowl season, and I could be very wrong, but this is my message to the Wildcats that it's put up or shut up the next month. Because if you can't beat Indiana, who a lot of people are saying are kind of frauds and they don't deserve to be ranked, as a top 25 team, considering they haven't played anybody, you have the chance to show that they played somebody. So I think that's the biggest motivation that I could give them going into Saturday. Again, 3:30 Eastern kickoff at the Lakefront Stadium, one of the final Lakefront Stadium games of the season. And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, we're gonna move. We're gonna move over to the UFC Paris recap now. We've gone a little bit out of order. I did the Bears first before I did Northwestern, but it's either here nor there. UFC Paris saw Hanato Moicano dominate Benoit Saint-Denis. He won by doctor stoppage. In a very very impressive performance. Did whatever he wanted to the Frenchman. Elbowed him, kneed him, took him to the ground. Utilized his wrestling well. Outstruck him in the first round, 30-4. Somehow took round two off, and Mark Goddard decided to stop the fight after round two because Benoit Saint Denis was just overly compromised and too bloody. So a solid stoppage there. Also, Nasruddin Imavov defeat Brendan Allen. We went over that fight a little bit more on episode 100 of the MMA Outsiders as well. And overall, I didn't do that well. I went 6-8 on this card, which is not good. It's one of my worst UFC marks of the year, and I'm very disappointed. And I'm sad to report also that I lost yet another main event pick. I took Benoit Saint Denis, which puts my overall UFC main event record below 500 at 15-17. So very very disappointing there, but overall good card. A lot of nice wins from a prospect perspective, and one of those cards that I think the international fans will remember for a long time, considering how ruckus the crowd was. All right, now they're going to transition though from UFC Paris to UFC 307 in Salt Lake City, Utah, headlined by two title fights. We got Alex Pereira taking on Khalil Roundtree Jr. for the light heavyweight championship. Then in the co-main event, we got a long-awaited fight, 10 years in the making, Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington. If you listen to my show earlier in the week, you know who I'm picking in the main event, but I'll just go through it again. I think Khalil Roundtree did not deserve this fight. This is an undeserved title shot. I think beating Anthony Smith to get a title shot is not good considering where Anthony Smith is in his career. I don't think Khalil Roundtree deserves this fight by any stretch. I think it should be Magomed Ankalaev. If he wins later this month, I think Pereira versus Ankalaev is the fight to make. With that being said, Pereira's on a meteoric rise. This is his third fight this year. I think he wins again in impressive fashion. Second round TKO. I think Roundtree does well early on in the fight, maybe the first minute, but then Pereira cracks him, and it'll just change the complexion of the fight there moving forward. And I also like Juliana Pena, just given her experience factor, to reclaim her UFC bantamweight title and await the winner of Kayla Harrison versus Katlyn Vieira. Just wanted to go over a few other things in relation to this card. As I alluded to, Salt Lake City at the Delta Center, third straight year that the UFC is hosting an event there. So congratulations to Utah. They've been getting some banger cards lately. 6 p.m. Eastern start for the prelims, with a 10 p.m. Eastern start for the main card. 12 fights are on the card. We had a few fights fall off, which is unfortunate. Some other fights on here. We got Jose Aldo versus Mario Batista. That's below the co-main event. We got Kayla Harrison, Katlyn Vieira, as I said. Roman Dolidze, Kevin Holland. That's an interesting fight. It's considering that Dolidze has been on a bit of an interesting run lately. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Joaquin Buckley is a striker's delight. Rodriguez versus Lucindo. That's a decent fight. This is a hardcore UFC pay-per-view. And I see a lot of people crapping on it online that it's not worth $80. I'm sorry. Anytime Alex Pereira fights, it's worth the price of admission. He's at the top of the card. Would highly suggest, if you have nothing better to do, this is a pay-per-view to either purchase or go out to see, because Pereira is the biggest star that the UFC currently has at the moment. So just something to keep in mind. Wanted to quickly just give a little capsule before we move on. Going into the month of October, my September UFC predictions record was abysmal. I went 18-18 in the month of September upon doing my final calculations for the month. So not a good month for me at the office, if you will, when it comes to picking fights. So very, very disappointed in myself for that. I figured I would have a much better month than what I did. And also, because I have to do this for full transparency's sake, my record going into UFC 307 is 213, 176, and 4 overall. The 4 meaning draws, no contests, etc., etc. So hoping to do better on that front. My UFC record in main events for pay-per-views specifically is 5-4. And then as I just alluded to earlier, 15-17 overall just for UFC main events, period. So that's UFC 307. You can pick that up on pay-per-view courtesy of ESPN Plus. Going over now to the NFL, or going back to the NFL rather, just wanted to go over a quick addition for my NFL Pick'em recap. So for those of you who know or don't know, I am in a Yahoo Pick'em league that is separate from the football forecast predictions that you see on social media every single week. So I just wanted to go through that. I had a banger week in the NFL overall, going 10-6, which had a crazy twist of events. So I'm happy to explain what happened here. Unfortunately, had a dip in the overall rankings because of Monday Night Football, but I have 38 points through the season. I've got 38 wins overall going into week 6. I'm 38-26 overall, or going into week 5. I had a wild week, so I started out 2-0, and then I dropped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I proceeded to win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I proceeded to win. I proceeded to win 8 out of my final 9 games of the week. To finish with 10 wins overall. So a 10-6 week for me on NFL Pick'em. That's pretty good. Again, 12 games over 500. I have a few early wins that I'll be getting into in just a second, but NFL Pick'em is fun. It helps you follow the season overall and just know all the teams, and it just, Yahoo does a good job of giving you the paper trail that you need to be successful in picking these games, and they also do a good job of telling you who the favorite and who the underdog is going in every week. So I appreciate them. I've appreciated their transparency for about the last 10 or so years that I've done the Pick'em competition, and I'm excited for another week of football. So it should be fun. All right, and now we're gonna move over to Zain Zinger. And this should be a fun segment as I have a couple of zingers to look at. The first one, in case you guys missed it, Alabama versus Georgia was a classic game. And sure enough, we had two very prominent figures at the game. We had former U.S. President Donald Trump and former interim UFC welterweight champion Colby Covington. Not to make this political for a single second, I'm just going to say this. I think those two being at that game, a high profile game on ABC in Tuscaloosa, great for college football. Gets people interested for all sorts of reasons. Whether you like Trump, whether you like Covington, whether you like the two teams in the game, everybody wins in this scenario because they get screen time, they get airtime. People like their personalities. I think it's all good considering that mainly the SEC schools are in the southern part of the region, and they have a lot of they have a lot of qualities that make them as such. So just wanted to give a brief mention that I personally think that this is great for the sport, just because it gets more people invested, not just in the SEC but the pageantry of it, and of course these two like sports, so it's not a surprise that either of them would be there, and it built speculation as to who Colby Covington would fight next in the UFC and when. So I think overall it was good for everybody involved. And Alabama won an instant classic that had the most wild 2 minutes and 15 seconds of a fourth quarter I think I've ever seen. Alabama pulling out the win there at the very end after it looked like Georgia was going to overcome a 30-7 deficit at one point. A wild game. Obviously, we had a shakeup in the rankings, and of course, Alabama, of course, was of course bumped up in the brand new AP poll as they should, and overtook Georgia in that way. So it was definitely a fun game, and definitely a very raucous atmosphere, considering that those two, along with several other celebrities, um, along with several other celebrities being there at the game as well. Wanted to move back over to Illinois to just address something really quick. I think Bret Bielema saying what he said at the post-game press conference after Saturday's loss to Penn State was great. He said, I think we're a really good football team right now, and there isn't anything that I don't think can be corrected. Um, that's a sign of a good football coach. He really realizes that his team has a ton of potential. They didn't fully show it on a big stage. He didn't trash his team. He never said the season was over. He never said anything like that. He made it very clear in his assessment that he believes in his team, and that's all you can really ask for. And going into a critical bye week where the end of the season is in their hands, whether or not they win 8 or 9 games is in their hands, to know that he has their back to do the best they can to win the games that they need to win to continue to be successful. That's huge. I just want to give a quick shout out. The way he handled that in defeat was very, very classy. So shout out Bret Bielema for facing the music and handling the media the way that he did. And then finally, just a small nugget would have been in pop culture. Olivia Dunne's boots. I don't know if anybody saw this, but she was in New York and saw Paul Skeen's pitch, of course, and was wearing Skeen's Pirates boots that looked like they were custom made. I don't know, man. All I gotta say is that's a loyal girlfriend if she's wearing boots that have her you know her opposite lover's name, if you will, on them. I think it's pretty cool considering how busy her life is, her final year at LSU or her final year of gymnastics. For her to be able to be as dedicated to Paul as she is, I think you have to give her all the props in the world. I don't want to hear any Livy Dunne slander on here. I think what she's done for college sports has been amazing. I think she's relishing in the success that she's had, and you can't not be happy for somebody to be successful in the way that she is, as well as him. I mean, and he pitched extremely well for his first season in Pittsburgh, and I think he'll be beloved there for a long time. And good for her for just overall giving his full support and credit where credit is due. All right, now we're going to move over to Zain's look ahead. We got week 5 in the NFL. Just wanted to go over quickly what the slate is going to look like. We have a pretty solid lineup in the NFL this week. Not the best Thursday night game, but it is what it is. So week 5, Atlanta versus Tampa Bay. Let's see, Minnesota against the Jets. That's in London. We've got the Bears and the Panthers. We've got Baltimore and Cincinnati. Must win for Cincinnati. I think the pressure is going to be on Baltimore to play well. That'll be interesting. Um, New England and Miami. That's a game the Patriots actually might be able to win, considering that Miami is awful, and they had another backup quarterback in on a Monday night. So it's a game where if you're in Survivor, I may even sneak that in as a potential Survivor pick to take the Patriots if you're still in. But stay tuned in more on that on Bando's Blitz. I don't want to spoil the full end up on that, but it is one sneaky possibility as well. Then we got, let's see, we got Washington against Cleveland. That's a good game because the Commanders have been playing well. Colts and the Jaguars. That's a potential lock of the week, considering the Jaguars were really bad. Let's see, the Bills in Houston, Vegas, and Denver. That's a game that's a coin flip because the Raiders played well enough to beat Cleveland, and Denver has now won its last 2 games after dropping its first 2. So that'll be interesting. San Francisco and Arizona, the Packers and the Rams, Seattle and the Giants, Pittsburgh and Dallas, which could be a great game, and then of course Kansas City and New Orleans on Monday Night Football. So that is the Week 5 slate, and then finally, just wanted to quickly go over the college football top 25 games to watch as we are in the month of October finally. So let's go through this briefly here. We got number 25 UNLV taking on Syracuse. We've got number 6 Oregon taking on Michigan State. We got number 9 Missouri taking on number 25 Texas A&M. Huge game in College Station there. Penn State versus UCLA, Louisville versus SMU. Louisville just had a very close game with Notre Dame. It was a good game too. Indiana Northwestern, which we already went over. Auburn versus Georgia, rematch of a crazy game last year in Jordan-Hare. This time it's in Athens. Ole Miss versus South Carolina. Iowa versus Ohio State. That'll be interesting. Clemson versus Florida State. And of course, Michigan versus Washington in the nightcap game on the NBC Saturday Night Till rematch of the national championship. That'll be good. Hint, hint, and that might be one of the college football plays that we take a look at for later in the week. But for the moment, though, that's going to do it for another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. This was episode 24, a little bit of a shorter episode. This weekend, even though it didn't pop up, I didn't have any errors at all, so that was obviously very good. We always like to have a clean show. Just wanted to give you guys a few brief reminders again. You can catch Bando's Breakdowns for your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Premium, and so much more. We greatly appreciate all of your guys' support on that front. Then, of course, if you could go over to the YouTube home, youtube.com/ETV Network, be sure to subscribe as the climb to 1,000 continues. And with that being said, this has been another edition of Bando's Breakdowns, episode 24. Again, my name is Zain Bando. Thank you again for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.